It started with a phone call. Nothing unusual. Just a neighbor worried about a woman she hadn't seen in a few days. I get those a lot. 99% of the time, it turns out to be nothing. A weekend getaway, a forgotten appointment. People vanish for all sorts of boring reasons. But that 1%, that's the part that keeps me up at night. I didn't know her name yet, just an address in a quiet suburban block on the east side of Portland. A neighborhood where the lawns are trimmed too neatly and the smiles stretch a little too wide. The kind of place where you can live for years and still not know what's going on behind the curtains. When I pulled up to the house, 2 stories, white siding, a faded red door, it felt like every other house on the street. Unremarkable, peaceful even. But something was off. The mailbox was full, newspapers piled on the porch, and a dog barking from inside with that anxious, lonely tone. The kind that says my person hasn't been home in a while. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Harder. Still nothing. The neighbor, a retired teacher named Mrs. Landry, was standing nearby, arms folded, eyes tight with concern. She's never gone this long without saying something, she told me. Her name's Jessica Boyd. She and her husband moved here maybe 5 years ago. Quiet couple. Kept to themselves mostly, but she always waved, always smiled. Jessica Boyd. That was the first time I heard her name. It wouldn't be the last. Mrs. Landry mentioned the husband, Evan Boyd, an architect, worked from home, friendly but distant. Didn't talk much. That's not a crime, of course, but it stuck with me. People who build things tend to be good at hiding things too. I called it in and waited for backup. Protocol. Something about the whole setup just didn't feel right. While I waited, I walked around the side of the house. The blinds were drawn, but I could see movement inside. Just a flicker. Could have been the dog. Could have been something else. When backup arrived, we entered through the back. The door was unlocked. Inside it was clean. Too clean. Like a showroom. No dishes in the sink, no clutter, no signs of life. Except for the dog, who came rushing up, tail wagging but eyes scared. That dog had seen something. They always do. We cleared the house, room by room. Nothing unusual, no signs of forced entry, no blood, no body. But then we reached the basement. It wasn't locked, but the door had a strange resistance. Something heavy behind it. When we pushed it open, the smell hit us first. Bleach. A lot of it. The kind of smell that clings to your clothes, your hair, your memory. The floor was damp, a single rug missing from the center, and in the corner a stack of boxes hastily rearranged. Someone had cleaned recently, desperately, still nothing we could arrest anyone for, not yet. But I knew, I always know, something bad had happened here. I spent the rest of the day trying to piece together who the Boyds were. No kids, no recent police calls, no financial trouble. On the surface, they looked like the picture of stability. But then I spoke to Jessica's sister. She was the first to crack the image. Jess hasn't been herself lately, she told me over the phone. She was distant, sad. She said Evan had been different, moody, controlling. She thought it was just stress, but God, I begged her to come stay with me. She didn't. And now she was gone. The next morning, I returned to the house, this time with a warrant. Evan wasn't there. According to his employer, he'd called in sick 3 days ago. Claimed food poisoning. We began a more thorough search. Phone records, email, trash. You learn a lot from what people throw away. And that's when I found the receipt. A hardware store dated 5 days ago, bleach, gloves, duct tape, rope, too much to be coincidence. Still no body, still no blood, but I wasn't looking for a body anymore. I was looking for a story. People think murder is loud. Screams, blood, a broken window, but the truth is it's usually quiet. A conversation turned sour, a shove, a snap. 1 second of blind emotion, and then silence. I've seen it too many times. This house, this perfect little house, was screaming in silence. And somewhere beneath all this bleach and order was the truth. It was my job to dig it out. The thing about men like Evan Boyd is they don't explode. They erode. From the outside, you'd never guess there was trouble. His social media was littered with smiling vacation photos, dinner plates from high-end restaurants, anniversary posts filled with heart emojis. He looked like the poster husband. But I've learned not to trust curated lives. The truth is never in the photos, it's in the gaps between them. After finding the receipt, I started digging deeper. I pulled Jessica's phone records, her emails, her private messages. At first, there was nothing, just the normal digital footprint of a woman in her 30s. Grocery lists, casual chats, the occasional meme. Then I found the Notes app. It was hidden behind a folder labeled Budget. The first entry was dated 6 months ago. He's getting worse. The yelling starts over nothing. Last night he threw my phone across the room because I didn't text back fast enough. He apologized, but I don't think he means it anymore. I kept reading. I miss who he used to be. I keep hoping it's stress from work, but part of me is scared. He watches me all the time, like I'm a project he's trying to fix. Another one. He won't let me see my sister. Said she's a bad influence, that she fills my head with ideas. I think he's scared I'll leave. And then, last night he grabbed my arm, hard, left a bruise. He said I made him do it, that if I were less difficult, he wouldn't get angry. I'd seen this pattern before. Love curdling into control, affection turning to fear. Victims who make excuses for bruises because the truth is too big to face. But reading it in her own words, it hit me hard. Jessica wasn't missing. Jessica was gone. I just didn't know where her body was yet. I tracked Evan down 2 days later. He was staying at a cheap roadside motel just outside the city, room paid in cash. He looked rough. Unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, a limp in his step that wasn't there before. He answered the door in sweatpants and a t-shirt that smelled like he'd been wearing it for days. "Detective," he said, forcing a smile. "Didn't expect to see you here." I could say the same. He invited me in. No hesitation, that's what got me. Most guilty men slam the door, lawyer up. "Evan?" He acted like we were old friends. The room was spotless, not a single thing out of place. Bed made, trash empty. Toothbrush aligned perfectly on the sink. The kind of order that doesn't come from habit, but from obsession. Or guilt. I sat on the edge of the chair. He took the bed. "You heard from your wife?" I asked casually. He sighed, rubbing his eyes. Number, I thought maybe she went to her sister's, but they haven't spoken in weeks. They hadn't. She wanted to. You stopped her. He looked at me, one of those slow, squinting stares, like trying to decide whether to lie or not. Then he shrugged. "We were going through some stuff." That was an understatement. I didn't arrest him. I had no legal grounds to, not yet, but he knew I was circling. He could feel it. After I left the motel, I sat in my car and went over everything again. Something didn't sit right. He was too composed, too tidy. Men who've snapped don't fold their towels and align their shoes. They spiral. Unless, of course, the spiral happened days ago and now we were just watching the cleanup. The next morning, we got the warrant for his work computer. He hadn't logged in since Jessica vanished. But when our tech guys cracked it open, they found a string of deleted files. One of them a blueprint, a house, a layout. Nothing strange at first glance. Until you noticed the basement, a false wall. My pulse spiked. We returned to the Boyd residence with a team. This time I didn't knock. The basement hadn't changed since our first visit. Still reeked of bleach, still eerily sterile. But we measured the walls, tapped the panels, counted steps, and then, behind a shelving unit partially blocked by storage boxes, we found it. A hollow echo. It took 2 hours to break through, and what we found behind that wall changed the entire case. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before that moment, before the wall gave way, we still had doubts, still had shadows without substance. That's how these cases go. You get fragments, feelings, a sinking pit in your gut that tells you something's off, but you can't act on instinct alone. You need evidence. You need the moment when suspicion becomes certainty. That wall, it was the moment. I remember watching the tech drill through the plaster. I remember the way the air shifted as the space behind it was exposed. The silence in the room was deafening. And then, there it was, a plastic tarp, rolled, tied, thick, heavy. The room went cold. We didn't open it right away. I watched my team freeze as if touching it might shatter them. I approached slowly, kneeling down, hand trembling. It wasn't blood I saw first. It was her bracelet, a thin silver chain with a blue stone. The same one Jessica was wearing in every photo her sister gave us. That was the moment. The silence broke. Jessica Boyd had been found. When the tarp was unrolled, the room fell into a heavy silence, like the house itself was holding its breath. Jessica Boyd's body was curled in on itself, her limbs stiff with the cold silence of death. There were no visible wounds, no blood, no marks of violence. Just stillness. Peaceful almost. If you didn't know better, you'd think she was asleep, but I knew better. We took photographs, documented everything, then zipped her into a body bag. I watched as they carried her out of the basement, past the family portraits, the clean kitchen, the couch still indented from someone who had sat there far too long. We sent the body for autopsy. I stayed behind. The house felt different now, less sterile, less secretive, as if it had finally exhaled. There was no more hiding. Jessica had been found, and now came the harder part, figuring out what had happened to her. I interviewed Evan again, this time in the station. He didn't know we had the body yet. He sat across from me, same calm expression. Legs crossed, hands folded, as if we were discussing taxes instead of death. But there was something in his eyes, tired, not scared. Like someone who'd already made peace with a version of the truth. "I've already told you," he said. "I don't know where she went." "And yet," I replied, "you haven't reported her missing. You've disappeared to a motel. You've scrubbed your house with enough bleach to knock out a horse. And you bought duct tape, rope, and gloves 5 days ago." He didn't flinch, just blinked. "That doesn't prove anything." I leaned in. "Evan, we found the blueprint, the false wall. You designed it, built it, hid her behind it." Still, he didn't move. Then I dropped the final blow. "We found her." A pause, a long one. He exhaled through his nose, not surprised, not shaken. "I didn't mean to," he whispered. There it was. Not a confession, not really, but close. I let the silence hang for a moment, let it grow thick between us. "What happened?" I asked. He looked at his hands, then at the table, then back at me. "It was a stupid fight," he said. "Over laundry of all things. She said I never helped around the house. I told her I was working. She screamed. I yelled louder. She threw a glass. I grabbed her." His voice trembled. "She slipped, hit her head. It wasn't supposed to happen like that." Classic. The accidental death defense. One I've heard 100 times. Sometimes it's true, sometimes it's rehearsed, but either way, it didn't match the scene. "You didn't call 911, I said. "I panicked." "You built a wall, Evan. That's not panic, that's planning." Silence. Then, his voice dropped even lower. "She told me she was leaving, that she was done, that she didn't love me anymore." I stayed quiet. That's when I lost it, not during the yelling, not during the glass, when she said she didn't love me. There it was, the real trigger. We charged him that night, second-degree murder, tampering with evidence, abuse of a corpse. He didn't resist, didn't protest, just nodded. I watched as they led him down the hallway, cuffs on his wrists, eyes forward like a man who had finally stopped running. But something still didn't sit right. The autopsy came in 2 days later. Cause of death, blunt force trauma to the back of the head. Estimated time of death, approximately 48 hours before our first visit to the house. That part matched his story. But then came the twist. Jessica had been sedated, traces of zolpidem in her system, enough to make her groggy, maybe even unconscious. Not something you use by accident. Now we weren't just looking at a crime of passion. We were looking at premeditation. I went back to the notes app. One entry stood out now, clearer than ever. "He's been making me tea at night. Says it helps me sleep. I think he's putting something in it. I wake up confused, dizzy. He says it's stress. I don't know anymore." There it was, the tea. He'd been drugging her, maybe for weeks, maybe longer. The image of the perfect husband was dead now. In its place stood a man who couldn't bear losing control. In the end, Evan Boyd pled guilty to second-degree murder. He didn't want a trial, didn't want the world picking apart his marriage, but he never admitted to the drugs. Never acknowledged the tea, the sedatives, the manipulation. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was denial, or maybe in his mind love had justified everything, even murder. The Boyd house stood empty now, cordoned off behind yellow tape like a scar left open to breathe. The neighborhood was quieter than usual. No lawnmowers, no children on bicycles. Just silence, pregnant and heavy, the kind that follows disaster. I stood on the sidewalk, staring at the front door. There was a stillness in me, a familiar one, the kind that comes when a case is technically over but nothing feels resolved. Evan had confessed, well, halfway. He admitted to the fight, the shove, the fall, but he denied the sedation, denied the manipulation, denied building that wall to conceal a body. Except he did build it. His fingerprints were on the screws. His blueprints matched the false wall's dimensions exactly. His emails had invoices for the materials. What he didn't realize was that the truth lingers in places we don't think to scrub. A week later, we searched the house again, this time with cadaver dogs and a forensic sound technician. The dogs hid in the garage, nothing visible, but the technician had something more delicate in mind. He brought in a contact microphone, a device that can pick up vibrations within walls. We placed it near the false wall in the basement just as a test. What we heard chilled me. A faint rhythmic knocking. We played it again. Slower. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks again. Then silence. It was too deliberate to be settling wood or pipes. And the time code? It matched the same date Jessica's sister had last received a voice message from her. A panicked, rushed voicemail saying, "I think he knows." I don't feel safe. Jessica had been alive, if only briefly, on the other side of that wall. And she'd tried to get out. I didn't tell Evan right away. I needed more. A knock wasn't enough. So we reconstructed her final hours. The sedative in her system meant she wouldn't have had the strength to fight. But she had enough awareness to panic, enough instinct to try and signal someone, enough desperation to pound on drywall from a hidden space, knowing no one would hear her. It was torture. Not the kind you see in movies, but the kind that crawls under your skin. Slow, suffocating, and it changed everything. When I sat down with Evan again, I brought the audio. I didn't speak, just hit play. The knocking filled the room. He stared at the table, then at me. His lips tightened, his hands curled into fists. "That could have been anything," he muttered. I leaned in. "She was alive. You sealed her in." "No. You drugged her. You trapped her. You walked away." "She slipped." "Then why the tea, Evan? Why the blueprints? Why the sound?" He didn't answer, just stood up and asked for his lawyer. But the damage was done. We upgraded the charges: first-degree murder, false imprisonment, aggravated cruelty. The court date was set. Public interest exploded. Media vans lined up outside the courthouse like vultures. Jessica's face was suddenly everywhere, on posters, on screens, on the lips of a community that once thought Evan Boyd was a charming, quiet man with a lovely wife. Now he was the blueprint for a monster. The day of the trial, I testified first, laid out the evidence, the wall, the blueprints, the autopsy, the audio. Then I played Jessica's final voicemail to her sister. It broke the room. No one could ignore the fear in her voice, not anymore. Evan's defense team tried to argue diminished capacity, stress, overwork. They painted a picture of a man fraying at the edges. But Jessica had documented everything in her notes, in her calls, in her bruises. She had left a trail of breadcrumbs, and all we had to do was follow it. The jury didn't take long. Guilty on all counts. Life in prison without parole. As Evan was led away in shackles, he looked back at me. Not with anger, not even regret, just emptiness. Like whatever had once been human in him had finally gone cold. That night, I went back to the Boyd house one last time. The yellow tape was still there. The porch light flickered. The wind moved through the trees with a low rustle that felt like whispering. I stood at the edge of the driveway listening. 3 knocks, or maybe just a branch against the siding. Hard to say, but I heard it, and I won't forget it.